Hey guys, what's up? K42 back here with Heledon / Michael Dennis.
Afternoon, I think. Yes.
Yeah, at this point it's afternoon. It is solidly afternoon in everywhere except California, which is still a place where I get views.
Or Hawaii, or Alaska, or
Well,
anywhere east of that, west of that.
those guys don't like me. It's the restraining order.
Uh,
I'm not allowed to talk about it. But anyways,
I told you to stay away from the luau.
yeah, well, I don't remember what I did, so I can't talk about it. But how's your week been going?
Fine.
So for the record, Michael Dennis is the author of 2 series I never remember the names of. It's Urban Cohorts is your superhero series, right?
Yes, and the other one is the Gathering the Shadows series. Don't ask about the name. But, yes, that one just released a book Sunday.
Awesome.
Literally just went up on Amazon Sunday.
That's the 3rd book in the series?
Yes. They're all, however, if you want to check them out, they're all self-contained. You don't actually need to read them in any particular order. So,
Okay.
feel free to check that one out, or any of them out. I am not going to complain.
Yep. Let me get that command in here so that people know they can do that. Not one M Dennis, it's !M Dennis. Don't you hate when you do that?
Yes, but your keyboard is not telepathic yet. Thank God.
I don't need other people telepathically hearing what I put in here. Especially if you're a writer, you don't need people knowing what you will say. Why are you looking into serial killer habits? You see, it's for a book.
No, I don't know if the book's ever actually going to get written.
But anyways, so that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have a blog post this week? Or?
I did. What the heck did I write about this week?
That's a question that I generally ask you.
Yes, well, I read 2 this week. One was about the business state of the blog.
Okay.
Basically, the fact that I don't have ads on my blog. I don't have, because the account I used, I can't run AdSense, so I can't advertise on it. So there will never be any ads. There will never be ads I put on it. I can't claim to know what Google will do.
Or at least until until it becomes a different situation.
Right. This week's was about different creatures from around the world you can use in your fantasy and horror series.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. For the record, Japan has far too many.
Yes. Oh my God! Did you even look at
I looked at
obviously animals?
I looked at the Wikipedia page. It's like what can be a creature? Everything.
Well, was this like real world creatures, or was it like fantasy creatures?
Mythological creatures from their mythologies.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that is something really interesting in Japanese, but if you want to go for real creatures that could be taken in a mythological context...
Oh, gods.
For maybe a horror creature... this one, right?
Yes.
Posting that link for everyone in here.
Yep.
It's a good read.
Yep. And it also gave me an excuse to talk about the Hodag. Hey.
But yeah, if you want a real creature that can go into a horror book, you just have to look at the Asian giant hornet.
Blah.
It's the size of your fist!
For the record, that's the thing that they used for the inspiration for the Cazadors from Fallout New Vegas. So you have them to thank for your nightmares.
Or if you're like me and you watched Jumanji as a kid,
oh God,
the wasps that come out of the Jumanji board are basically Asian giant hornets.
Yep.
There are reported deaths from these things every year, not because of the potency of their venom, but because of how much of it go into you when they sting you.
Oh yeah,
these things are horrifying.
Oh yeah, hell, if you want to raid the biological world, just raid fungi for anything. There's plenty of terrifying things there.
I'm just gonna eat while we do this.
Yep.
But yeah, so you got your blog post out. And then we also had an assignment from last week.
Yes, teacher, we did have homework.
Exactly. Being the teacher, I'm gonna take credit for that one.
Yes.
But last week we talked about fantasy settings and kind of what we like to see that doesn't get done a lot. You know, things like we're doing currently Cthulhu in high fantasy, not horror or Victorian, anything like that.
Or even low fantasy, because I have seen that before.
Yeah, and that's interesting in its own right. But things that we don't get to see often, I think I think I thought of this later. I don't think I got to talk to you about it, but I like seeing superheroes in post-apocalyptic worlds.
Hey, it worked for that one episode of Justice League.
Yeah. But like where you actually get the sense of justice, where it's not a Mad Max kind of situation where you get someone who's out defending the lands and creating a conclave of innocence or something like that.
So not Judge Dredd.
Right, not Judge Dredd.
Not to say Judge Dredd is bad at all. I've never read it.
But, you know, little weird twists like that. And the one, we both picked settings that we really wanted to see done and did kind of campaign setting write-ups for these settings.
Yep.
The one I picked was fantasy in space. So, like, not science fantasy, not spaceships or anything, but literally traveling the stars with the help of a mage. You know, no advancement of technology. We use teleportation to get between planets, and dragons, mythological creatures, some of those things can get between planets, but it gives a real nice mix in there, I thought of. And yours was...
the water-based campaign setting. Basically, just a campaign setting that basically takes place exclusively or almost exclusively on the water.
So, like, One Piece with less time on the islands.
Yes.
Because, yeah, we see that. We see things that happen in the water, and then they take place all on the land.
Right.
There isn't actually that much water going on.
Right.
So, we got up write-ups for those, and I was gonna kind of run through those, if you want to present those real quick.
Sure. Want to start or you want to start?
You start. Let's...
No, fine.
Maybe we should rock, paper, scissors this.
Alright. So, I don't actually have a proper name for my world, but basically it's a world that's about 80... It's a world that's 80% water. There's still islands. There's still land, but it's like 80% water, so even more so than our world. With 6 different nations, for lack of a better term, that are all situated on the water. You have the nation of Abarek, which is an island-hopping pirates loose nation of island-hopping, basically pirates who hang out basically in the middle, there and around a long string of atolls and islands. Basically, they hop from base to base, island to island, basically doing whatever the hell they want. And they basically get away with it because no one really has the strength to do anything about it. They just don't have the manpower to take them all on. So they just basically hang around and be pirates.
So, are they like... they aren't like a governmental entity, though. They're not really trying to police anyone else?
No, not particularly. The biggest rule they have is not the only rule they really have is not interfering with each other. Is about the only thing that they don't steal each other's kills, they don't steal each other's ships, they basically leave each other alone. Everyone else is fair game.
Okay. So
then you have the island nation of Heledon, which is an island to the east. It's an island surrounded by constant storms and mist that basically tells everyone else to shove off. They don't like outsiders, and they abhor violence on their shores unless they're the ones causing it. Any outsider that causes any troubles there answers to them. Other than that, they don't really get involved in the outside world because they don't like the outside world.
what happens to an outsider that actually gets through the storms?
They're tolerated. They'll put up with them. They won't just kick them out. But you won't get a friendly reception, let's put it that way.
Okay.
And if you cause any problems on the island, well, you're going to have to deal with them. And they're not going to be nice about it. There's the island of Teller to the north. It's a island mostly of dense forests, mostly made of a particular type of tree called ironwood. Makes amazingly good wooden ships. And through that, they've been able to build a pretty large navy that they try to use to influence the other nations, but the other nations basically tell them to shove off for the most part. For the most part, they spend most of their time trying to... I wrote it down. They spend most of their time trying to round up the pirates in the center seas, but they don't get very far for the most part.
Makes sense, but they're kind of making their attempt at being the government of this world.
Yes, they're attempting. They're basically the English of this world.
I kind of like that though. Except the English actually controlled everything. I like that.
They actually succeeded eventually.
Kind of failed attempt at that. The people who are in power don't actually care to govern most of the things. They just let be.
Right. To the west, you have the Temple Isles. They're basically a loose conglomeration of where a lot of the temples ended up. A lot of the major churches, temples, and to most of the gods ended up there. And they spend most of their time competing with each other, for the most part. They're mostly like, they spend most of the time trying to influence each other. And while they will throw up attempts to control the outside world, it's mostly through their own little armies of clerics.
And is that like Greek gods? Is that like Norse? Or...
I haven't decided yet.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm picking up pantheons usually the kind of thing I do last, or more towards the middle when I start trying to actually get down to what my characters look like.
Well, and these are rough write-ups. Like, easily, if we were to run a game with these, probably some of the things would change.
Oh yeah, or we start narrowing down on different things depending on what our characters wanted to do.
By the way, if anyone wants us to run a game with this, send in requests, recommendations. I'll promise nothing, but I am always happy to hear interest, and it will definitely get thought about.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone wants to pay us to DM, well... I've heard of people doing that. And then to the southeast is the nation of Iron, or the nation of Heledon. It's a nation of devils that cracked through a few decades back, and basically took over that whole section of islands. They have basically enslaved the locals and are basically ripping out any usable resources they can out of the land as much as they can to build their iron knots. What exactly they plan on doing, but once they get beyond that point, no one's really sure, but everyone's sure it's bad. Because devils.
Makes sense.
And to the south, you have the Southern Bergs, the land of the dire penguins.
Because everyone needs dire penguins.
Of course. They craft ships out of magical ice that never melts, even when exposed to fire.
Like intelligent dire penguins.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And while their numbers may be few, they formed a grand alliance with the Mayan polar bears to strengthen their numbers.
Okay. I like it. Now, are there, obviously there's creatures. Have you thought about whether there are other races, like dwarves or...
I figure there are. I figure they're less numerous, and they mostly populate themselves amongst the different islands. They am either working with their own tribes or working with the different nations, depending on where they are, what they're doing. I figure the only place they don't that most of the other races don't appear in is the land of Heledon, because, well, devils. Nobody works with them willingly.
No, not willingly, but that's a key word.
Yeah.
Except, although technically, depending on the mythos you're going with, only... people are only allowed to work with devils willingly.
Details. That is also true. And it also depends on how far you're willing to stretch the word willingly.
You willingly signed this contract.
Yeah. Or you willingly let me do this. I may have forced you into doing that, but that's not the point.
Okay. So those are the main land masses?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. There are smaller islands that dot the area. Most of the magical creatures tend to be ocean-based just because, well...
Right.
It's mostly water.
Now, here's an interesting question for you,
Yo.
which probably will have an easy answer, as they all end up do. But have you thought about if you ran a game in this, what system you would use?
Well, that is a good question.
And a lot of it obviously depends on the type of game we're running.
Yeah. Like, it would be very easy to run D&D in this setting. I don't think there'd be any major issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably use 5th. I find 5th works well for getting into quickly and is more balanced than 3rd.
It's more balanced than 3rd, certainly. I was actually...
Admittedly, that's a low bar, but still.
I thought you might go for 3-5, though, because it has the ship mechanics already worked out.
It does. That's
Whereas
a good point.
5th is still kind of fledgling.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know if there aren't really any official rules for ships in 5th. I could probably find some third-party stuff very easily. 5th's got a ton of that stuff laying around. I could always raid the Unearthed Arcana Reddit for nothing else.
Yeah. I love the Unearthed Arcana Reddit.
Yes. But other systems... A lot of the other systems I know well enough are very much based in their own setting, or they're very much built around their own setting. D&D is one of the few that's very adaptable from setting to setting.
It is. I think that's something I like in my RPGs, is something that I can play not in their setting. It's part of what I have an issue with Scion, is...
Yeah.
It's so hard not to run it in the Scion world.
Yeah, it's built for that world, and taking it outside, that means you gotta do a lot more work.
But...
Hi, Fuzzy.
One of the things you could run your game in would be easily adapted Fate system.
Well, Fate adapts for anything.
Fate adapts for anything, but considering that where the focus of your world is... like, Fate would have the basic skill checks for naval commands and things like that.
That's true.
And then you could put a large focus on, just what happens on the ship. And, it has more things set up for not straight-up combat.
True. And D&D has always been especially these days, very rules light on non-combat stuff.
Mm-hmm. Which is okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. It's what the game is built for, but something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Fate would work very well, though. Ironclaw could also work. Ironclaw could actually work fairly well. I'd have to modify the species I had in mind, but that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Hi there, little cat. Little Neko says hi. Everyone say hi to the little Neko.
Little kitty.
Get the little Neko in chat. Why do you headbutt the things?
She's
I
a
never
cat.
Understand.
She's a cat. Cats headbutt things. I don't know why. It's a thing they do.
Mm-hmm. So that's pretty awesome. So it's just World of Water for right now?
Yeah, I still need a proper name. I will freely admit one thing I'm bad with is names. I'm bad with names.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bad with names in real life. Why would I be any better with it in fantasy?
Well, and names are hard to pin down, really. You gotta figure out what feel you're going for, what... even if you're not pulling directly from another language or culture, you need to figure out what would be okay, because any combination of sounds is gonna sound like another language,
right? And if it doesn't, that means you probably just have a bunch of gibberish, and then you're
Cthulhu.
At least that was intentional.
Well, that's the thing, though. At this point, even if you put down a bunch of gibberish, someone's gonna think of Lovecraft. It's all going to relate back to something, so...
Yeah. You also want to avoid the problem where nobody can pronounce your stuff, so they can't talk about it. If I can't pronounce your fantasy names, it's gonna be hard for me to describe your book to somebody.
That's kind of what came up with my setting. So this is a good point to transition into the write-up that I did, which was the universe of Astrael. Wow, I got better lighting all of a sudden. As I pull up the bright white document here.
Lighting up the world.
But yeah, so like I said earlier, mine was, we said Spelljammer to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
It was fantasy in the stars. So no spaceships, no advanced technology, medieval technology, Dark Ages.
Yeah, so kind of like Star Wars, they gave no shits about science.
Right, a lot like that actually. Travel between planets is done through powerful mages or powerful beings.
Mm-hmm.
Dragons are kind of the most obvious to do for that, but additionally, like dark beings can probably travel across great distances through the shadows.
And who doesn't love dragons?
Yeah, dragons are awesome. One author I actually read who did something like that was Raymond Feist.
Of course.
Have you read his stuff?
No, I haven't. I've heard about him.
He's awesome. I highly recommend him. Some of his things, like, he writes really good books. He puts a lot of effort into the actual writing of the books. And the storylines are pretty good. The diversity of the characters is a little lacking. But, if you take it for what it is.
He's not the only fantasy writer with that problem.
Exactly. If you can't read something because of that issue, your range is going to be a little limited, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly.
But he did dragons which travel kind of across dimensions, but his dimensions were done in sort of an interstellar way.
Okay.
But anyways, the one I made is the universe of Astrael. So it's a play on astral, guys. I'm very original with my names. But it's the same solar system as our own. It's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, asteroid belt, Jupiter, Venus. I want to say no, not Venus, Saturn. I want to say Uranus, Neptune.
Yes.
I always mess up those two. And then Pluto, because Pluto's a planet, damn it!
But it's too small and its orbit's isn't proper.
Pluto is a planet. So says the horrible nostalgia prince in me. But yeah. So it's all 9 planets, plus the asteroid belt. Earth is really the center of anything that happens in this universe. Less because it's where the most powerful things happen, and more because it's where is most friendly to humanoids. So, like, it's the easiest to reach and buy any humanoids because they're generally born there.
Yeah.
And it is the most hospitable. It's the, things won't get torn down by acid rains or, storm giants won't accidentally stomp on them. Generally.
Yeah, we make no promises.
Unless someone does something really offensive to the giants of Neptune, the giants of Jupiter, I'm gonna mess up the planets a lot. So I'm really bad with words. You're bad with names. I'm bad with words. And I'm a writer.
It's fine. We only make our living with them.
Exactly. But, so yeah, Earth is the most populated by humanoids. It's mostly populated by humans and dwarves, and there's a smaller but significant portion of elves there. Elves were not originally born on the Earth, but they are kind of refugees from Venus. They originally were born and raised a civilization on Venus, a lush kind of jungle planet, and within the last few thousand years were driven away by shadow forces. This is the origin of the Dark Elves in this universe. They corrupted some of the elves and have turned them into dark kind of elder force being.
Damn it, Sauron.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, Venus now is home to wood elves who are still there, kind of living a guerrilla lifestyle, often in the shadows in small tribes, and moving constantly, nomadic, and trying very fiercely to fight back at the forces of shadow. And this is also where monstrous races like ogres, orcs, and goblins are, and as well as, you know, like dark panther type of things, more powerful ancient entities. This is not necessarily, you know, elder beings like Cthulhu stuff, but it's definitely has a feel of the touch of the void there.
Yeah. I would just like to point out, as bad as that place is, it's still a sight better than actual Venus.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. Like, it's, any vegetation there grows alongside acid rains. Not, you know, as constant as the clouds on Venus, but like, still harmful to humans. You might be able to develop a resistance to it if you're a different entity that grew up in the area, but so like wood elves will have an acid resistance, and high elves will have a lesser acid resistance. Dark elves will have like acid absorbing.
Ew.
Orcs and stuff also, but it's very harsh and very unfriendly to other people, except that it's beautiful and the source of a lot of energy for the people who were born there. So it's kind of a thing of loss, like cutting off a limb that the elves had to move away and find refuge at Earth. And then Mars is the home of no one in particular, like desert beings, probably lizard men, but it's a very mountainous, desertous region, and it is populated by a lot of humans and dwarves who spend time mining the planet for rich minerals and metals.
Where do they get the water from?
The water still exists, so that's the thing. Like,
there you go.
These planets all have their own atmosphere and ecosystems to support life, with the exception of Saturn and possibly Uranus, although no one really goes out to check Uranus. But so Mars still has the oceans and the rivers and stuff, but it doesn't reach to completely, you know, grow vegetation. It's still mountainous and desertous, just like mountains and deserts here.
Okay.
Just a little more expansive.
Well, there you go. All right.
And so, if you want to go to Mars, though, it doesn't tend to be a good place to raise a family. You know, first of all, deserts are dangerous places in general. You have a whole bunch of heat exhaustion that can happen to you, and then in fantasy worlds, you always have some type of lizard about to eat you up.
Read Dune for that.
Yes.
Also, if you don't fry during the day, you might freeze at night. Just one of the nice little side effects of the desert.
But it is still the easiest to go to, so a lot of working people go to Mars. Like, once again, they're miners. They mine out metals, they mine out minerals and stuff like that.
Yeah, so if you want to be a miner, get your ass to Mars!
Mm-hmm.
You are pathetic!
I was gonna say go west, young man, but that doesn't necessarily lead to Mars or anywhere interstellar.
I had to go with the Total Recall reference. So.
Yeah.
Come on.
But then, so that's pretty. There's nothing actually that goes on there. There's some trading that happens, but not as much because people don't trade there. Like, it's miners who are trading for, you know, basic habitation stuff, but moreover, you'll find traders on Earth.
Right.
Earth will be the home of your bazaars and stuff. And it's like, it's still a
Can
fantasy
I help
world.
you?
The really weird thing about Mars is the Underdark is housed on Mars. Minus the Wood Elves.
Yeah.
But, like, the deeper you mine into Mars, the more likely you are to start finding, you know, fungus that wants to kill you, or a few ancient beings who have been mining from this.
So don't mine too greedily or too deep.
Yes. Which I'm sure no one ever does.
No. One thing you might want to think about is, while there probably aren't a ton of traders on Mars, there's still going to be quite a few hanging around to supply the miners, just because, well,
yeah,
trade is trade.
But like basic supplies, not like necessarily weapons goods.
Maybe some basic weapons, probably nothing fancy.
Right. Not anything like you would see at a bazaar. No luxuries, no
Not yet,
silks
anyway.
or right. So that's Earth, Venus, and Mars. Those are the basic three that, you know, would be my main focus for any low-level adventurers.
Yeah, and you have variation there. If you want jungle adventures, you can head to Venus. If you want regular adventures, you can stay on Earth. You want the Wild West, head to Mars.
Yeah, or if you want a whole lot of like I said, Earth is still Earth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe not with quite the diversity of cultures, because some of that is just naturally migrated outside.
Mm-hmm.
But you could still find, you know, differences between the different areas in Earth.
Oh, yeah.
But then you get out to the more exotic places that are harder to get to. So, like, travel is still distance-based, even if you're teleporting.
Right.
So you need more powerful mages to get further out.
Right. Have you... I'm just thinking... Unless I don't know what the distances are like in your world, but just the distances between planets here. Compare that to the teleporting distances in D&D. It's like, oh gods.
Yeah, no. These are things that generally only the most powerful of beings can do on a whim. Generally, you would need like a ritual site to get around to different worlds. But
oh, that could be an adventure in its own right. You need to get to on a planet. You got to track down one of these damn sites and make sure it hasn't been taken over by something.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Especially if you're going for like a royal takeover type of thing.
Oh, gods.
But the next planet, one of my favorites, is Mercury, which, being closest to the sun, houses beings of light. These are like, I had a good word for them. But they are astral. They're astral beings mixed with the blood of mortals. So these are a lot like Asimir in D&D, but even more, they're like half divine beings.
Okay.
They exude light. They're like, I'm trying to think. I have an image in my head, and I'm not sure where it's from, but they're like, they're luminescent, but their skin just glows with the light that comes out of them. They have some ritual markings on their body, but they're very regal beings. They consider themselves to be royalty of the highest degree.
Right.
And they draw their power from the sun, so they always live closest to the sun. They're called the Illuminine, and they live in palaces of glass and marble. Generally, glass is brought over from Mars, and then the sand brought over from Mars, and then built into glass on Mercury, so it can be as pure as possible.
All right.
And they rarely venture out from their homes unless they need some sort of luxury from Earth or any of the other planets. They will venture out sometimes and contract people. Not many of them go out as adventurers.
Right.
It's a damn rare sight and worthy of tales when it happens. Because as high and mighty and conceited as these people may be, there is no question they are powerful. They are nigh immortal beings who have a lot of time to study and a lot of time to draw in power for magical spells.
Right.
They would probably be like a tier or so under dragons in terms of magical power. So these would not be player characters except with like some serious things, drawbacks posted onto them.
So the kind of thing you have to whack Torin for wanting to play.
Yes. Torin is unfit chaos, and he is our game breaker.
Yeah.
He's fun. He's not a dick about it, but yeah, I remember having to remind him that no, ability points have a limit in the system we were playing, Besom. Either way, so Mercury is still, it's harder to get to than any of the major three, but it's still easier to get to than anything past the asteroid belt. That's effectively the outer rim. It is hard to get to and takes someone who really wants to get out there. And it's about as lawless as you would expect.
As I was say, at that point, you're taking your life in your own hands.
The only place in the outer rim that is particularly, in the gas giant planets, that is particularly well inhabited is Jupiter. Jupiter is inhabited by giants, basically. It is the giant world. It is basically like Earth, same type of terrestrial landscape, but it is constantly covered in clouds, and everything is supersized.
Yeah.
We would be like halflings there at best.
Great.
So giants live there, and giants of all sorts, but the most powerful of the giants are the storm giants, who draw their power from the eternal storm, they call it. The
Eye of Jupiter, for those who are keeping track.
Exactly. And then the moons of Jupiter actually play in a lot as well. They would be housed to a lot of different races, because they're basically the size of planets themselves.
Yeah.
And there's like 60 of them.
Say, for those keeping track, there's like 60 moons of Jupiter. It's ridiculous.
So you get a huge diversity of races in there that I couldn't even begin to get into right now. But it would be the gamut of like bird people to mind flayers to orcs to like orcs over from Venus that took a random portal out here.
Damn orcs always taking a random portal.
Yeah, no, they're the worst about it.
Ask Azeroth about that sometime.
And then you get Saturn, which is a glass planet. It is made of glass and crystal, and it's very cool, but not very hospitable. That is the one with the least hospitable environment. You would need to bring over your own water.
Yeah.
And supply. And so this one is not actually very inhabited, except by the Mages Guild. The Mages Guild has a placement on Earth, has a chapter, basically. But being that they work with a lot of errant energies, a lot of chaos, they pick somewhere isolated to do their job, and it's definitely not because they're arrogant.
No, I was going to say arrogant. It's like far away from everyone else, shiny. No one else lives there. Yeah, mages live here.
Yep. So the Mages Guild is centered on Saturn, but that's basically it for Saturn. Obviously, some beings with that much magical energy around in the atmosphere, some beings do develop and come into creation there, but
I wonder if crystal dragons hang around there.
Huh. I wonder as well.
God damn it.
And it would be... The other thing about it is it would be overloaded. It's like the dream of dwarves to go there.
Oh, God.
But dwarves don't tend towards the magical nature in this setting. Yeah. So they hardly ever find a way to get there, because mages guilds are a little exclusionary. Like, they, not necessarily by race, but by power level, by skill, and most dwarves just don't have the inkling.
Right.
And then Neptune is a water world. There are things of the dark deep that would live there, like sea creatures, the kraken.
As I say, I'm expecting at least a kraken or two.
Yeah. There
Nobody
would be
release
things
it.
that, well, and like if they ported it over from Neptune, it would be like a WMD.
Yeah.
But there are things that live there unchecked by higher predators.
Because they are the higher predators.
Exactly. They kind of are a higher form of predator because they have no natural checks on them.
Right.
And then Uranus is a cloud planet with ancient ruins. No one lives there right now, but something did. A few mages have been out there to see it and report on it, but it has a strange habit of turning people insane, and a lot of people never return.
Translation plot hook for mid to high level campaign.
Yes. But it is mostly a cloud planet. No one is actually reported on the surface of the planet, although that's not necessarily nefarious thing. It's not like anyone who goes there dies, just the ancient ruins are interesting enough.
Right.
And then it's a dangerous enough planet that...
Nobody makes it that far.
Right. And then Pluto is the other really interesting place that I like, other than Mercury, because that is the Vault of Souls. Pluto, I didn't borrow from Roman mythology. I don't know what you're talking about. Pluto is effectively the afterlife.
Or a couple of other fantasy series.
For, it's the afterlife for dark, corrupt souls. The good and pure souls, which, I mean, you can go into the specifics of that on your own, but basic souls, if you're not evil, if you haven't committed crimes against nature, you get to go and live among the stars as a soul, is the mythology. The fact, though, is something weighing souls down weighs them down to Pluto, where they are locked in a vault. Pluto isn't that big, to be clear. It's still a planet, but it's not that big. It just happens to be on the outer edge. It takes extremely high magics to get there, and is only reported on by a handful of archmages over the millennia.
Well, think about it. It's a vault full of the most impure and corrupt souls in the system. That is not going to be a place the average person is going to want to visit for any reason.
Exactly. And it's like a really dark underworld. Like, it's not a mix of different people. It is dark people and beings. It is the
This is the place
prison for a lot of infernal creatures.
This is the place where the demons end up.
Yes. And there's actually not that many demons left in the main worlds. A lot of them are locked up on Pluto. That is something that the last Archmage who was able to reach Pluto was able to report on, was that a lot of the demons were locked away there.
Hope to God that the place doesn't get cracked, otherwise you're going to have problems.
Yeah. And then the asteroid belt is another interesting thing, but it's not that inhabited. Moreover, really high-end crew, like a mob or something, could hide goods in the asteroid belt, and it's often considered like that. Like, no one with means... No one who wants to live an honest life has any reason to go there.
If you're going to the asteroid belt, you're doing something wrong
And
at some level.
The asteroid belt doesn't necessarily have its own atmosphere, so it takes a stronger mage to artificially hook up even a mini atmosphere to these asteroids. So it becomes the hiding place of a lot of higher end, like Thieves Guild type things. So that's my world.
There you go.
It's a little longer just because I have 9 distinct places. 10 really.
Yeah.
To talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But
And there's still plenty of plot hooks just laying around the place where you're just like, ooh, shiny.
Oh god, yes. I would actually really love to run a game in that. If I were going to run a game, I think I would probably go with D&D, just because
it's very easily flexible for this.
And like especially this, like most of the differences between planets are environmental differences, which it has, extreme environments. It has the fire resistance, the acid resistance.
Oh yeah, hell, and planar travel is something that's been talked about in D&D since the very beginning, pretty much. So it's not like traveling to other worlds is unheard of in D&D. They have rules and stuff for that already set up. So
right,
and it's very easy to adapt those to say, hey, well, you're actually just traveling to different planets.
Mm-hmm. That would be a little bit my issue with using D&D, though, would be having to kind of nix out the planes, because you've already got so much going on that adding in, a fire plane for each of these planets would be weird. And it could be that you just don't have a connection to the fire plane when you're on Neptune.
Or it could be that there just isn't that much of a difference from planet to planet. Fire is fire. It acts like fire. Water acts like water. It doesn't really matter where you go. It's
no, but I mean, like, if a player wants to, players are so used to shades and things like that coming from the plane of shadow that I would have to say, okay, that doesn't exist. Or I would need to figure out if it does exist.
Yeah, you have to figure out how the planes connect to connect to our world. And it can be slightly different, but
so I really like that idea. But yeah, you have any?
I was just trying to think of other systems I know, because I don't actually that many sci-fi systems, sadly. It's weird. I've just recently gotten back into sci-fi, so I'm actually not as read up in the genre as I am on others.
Well, and sci-fi systems wouldn't really work for it.
That's true. That's a good point. I mean, you could adapt some of them. Like, I'm sure you could adapt Star Wars for this easier than others, but that's not saying much.
You would need like a force power for traveling, but you could easily make mages. Just a Jedi Order.
Yeah. Warhammer 40k would not work for this.
No, because they're so focused on the technology. That's the big reason for using D&D.
Yeah, because it cares so much less about technology. Hell, it barely mentions them most of the time.
But I really like this. I would be really interested in running a campaign for it.
It's definitely workable. Yeah.
Or, just writing a story, maybe. But
there's always that option.
So that is
I don't have word page documents eaten up with story ideas at all.
Yeah, you and me both. I think every writer in ever.
It's like I hear every people say, I got this great idea for a story. Let's share it. If I tell it to you, we can share the profits. Okay, first of all, there aren't going to be profits. Second of all, I have a billion ideas. I don't need yours. Ideas are the easy part.
Yeah. So, that's the universe of Astrael. I think I need to work on that name, but that's the only thing.
You have a name. I still do not. I'm not calling it Waterworld. I refuse to be involved in Kevin Spacey.
Aquaria?
It's possible. I could call it Aquaria if I was going for more Greek themed. I'll think about it.
But
maybe I'll read the Norse this time. I don't do that as much.
With that out of the way, so any fans here of Sentinel Comics, might have heard Sentinel Comics, the card game.
Yeah.
Sentinels of the Multiverse. Might have heard that they just announced a new tactics game coming out. I'm scared. Me and my girlfriend, most of my girlfriend, have put over $500 into this game. Easily.
Yeah.
We put $350. she put 350 into the last Kickstarter for Oblivion.
They're not joking, by the way. Just so we're clear, that's not an exaggeration.
She put in as much as possible. So they announced Sentinels of Freedom, a story-driven campaign with the Sentinel Comics universe. And it looks like a strategy, almost like Shadowrun. It looks like to me.
A Shadowrun. A Shadowrun.
So this is what we're looking at.
Yeah. Shadowrun. Maybe some XCOM in there too.
Yeah. God, that's a long link. Why? Why?
Well, to be fair, the name is longer than most games.
So, what? There we go. This is another good look at it.
Oh, that's Bunker. Okay, that was one of Unity's creatures.
Yeah.
Robots.
That's the Bunker suit. Anyone who knows these guys. If you don't know Sentinel Comics, it's a co-op card game.
Yeah, it's a co-op superhero card game. You basically play against a villain deck that plays itself, and then you try not to die.
Yep. So it's not based on, like, they don't mention any real-world comics.
Right. It's all based on a fictional comic book series
called Sentinel Comics.
Yeah. They definitely have shout-outs to a lot of different characters with their characters, but they don't directly reference any of them.
No. So, like, but all of the games are playing as a team of superheroes. So you're playing as, like, Justice League in Sentinel Comics world. You're playing as the Sentinels, which are a team of 5 heroes who end up teaming up a lot in the pages of Sentinel Comics.
Yep.
And then you'll be fighting someone who requires a team to fight. So, like, Lex Luthor, when he gets a huge scheme on.
Yep. Or
the Lex Luthor-like character is Baron Blade.
Yeah. So God, he's a pain in the ass.
He really isn't. Not once you learn the game.
Yeah, fair enough.
Unless you play as Mad Bomber Baron Blade, which ups the. But that's the thing. Like, we'll play through a bit of this later, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, each of the different villains has their own different gimmicks, their own different play styles, and their own different difficulty levels. And you also fight environments that have their own difficulty levels too. Some of them work with you, some of them eat you alive.
And a lot of them have aspects that work with you and that work against you. So that's why it's, an environment. It's somewhere you're fighting in. It's not necessarily one way or the other.
Unless it's Rook City.
Rook City always hates you. Rook City is the Gotham of Sentinel Comics,
and it is
except worse.
Yes, it's the Bloodhaven of the Sentinel universe.
Yeah, that
for the comic book fans out there.
So Sentinel Comics, the Sentinel, I believe their company name is Sentinel Comics. Yeah, inspired by the award-winning game by Sentinel Comics.
Developed by Underbite Games, who I'm not familiar with.
Underbite makes some cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I'm not familiar with them.
I know I've seen the logo. There we go. Super Dungeon Tactics.
Oh, okay. I've heard good things about that.
Yeah, we got the game. It's a It's a digital version of Super Dungeon Bros, which is a kind of a collector's card board game, and it's pretty good. So I'm excited for this. But I thought we would take this chance to talk about some of our favorite character-based card and board games. So not things like
Magic, where you're not really playing a character; you're just putting together a deck. We're talking stuff like Sentinels, where your character either determines your deck or heavily influences what kind of deck you're going to play,
or your actions. Like
for example, a good example from the digital world is a closer example is Hearthstone, just because your class determines heavily what kind of deck you're going to end up playing.
Yeah, I could accept Hearthstone as that, but.
Not quite to the same extent. But.
Yeah, I'm thinking like less on the collectible mechanics.
Yes, because
The other thing I was thinking was like not Munchkin because you're all starting out as the same character. It's just
you're not playing a character. You're just playing a set of cards you happen to collect over the course of the game. Yeah. So less deck builders too.
So
Sentinels is a good example. Another good example I can think of is Arkham Horror.
Arkham Horror is actually, I think, my favorite.
Spirit Island too, for that matter, because those not only determine how heavily your starting points, they determine what you're good at, what kind of stats you have, what you can do. Spirit Island more so than even Arkham, because with Arkham you end up discovering a lot of random stuff that can really change how you do things, but not so much with Spirit Island.
Mm-hmm.
At least not with creatures I saw. Maybe there are others that are different.
So, I will say the one that I like most would probably have to be Arkham Horror is a little too long, honestly, for my liking. I love the game, but if it could take half the time, then I could actually get through a game of it. I also really like the Dresden Files, but it's hard to get into for anyone who doesn't know the series. Probably the game that I like most out of this would be, and we don't get to play it often, but that's because we just don't pull it out, but The Legend of Drizzt, the Dungeons & Dragons board game, which there are a whole bunch of different board games for this. Legends of Waterdeep is, I think, the most popular one. But it's a really cool way to do D&D light, basically. But you're also playing through the characters of the Forgotten Realms books. So if you are a fan of the Drizzt Do'Urden series of books, you can...
Did I pronounce that? I never knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drizzt Do'Urden. The audiobooks have a intro by R.A. Salvatore.
Thank God.
So,
just a note to random fantasy authors: don't put random apostrophes in your names. Don't do it.
Well, I do know. I actually really like the apostrophes if they make sense. I like the Do'Urden name. But
it's a personal pet peeve.
One thing to note about R.A. Salvatore, though, is he's a total troll.
Of course.
Fun fact: on the intro to one of his books, he talked through it and he pronounced Drizzt both Drizzt and Dritzt at two separate times during the thing.
You evil bastard.
But yeah, so I really like that one. Obviously, Sentinels is extremely good at that, and I would call that my favorite if I hadn't played it so much. And probably that's why it should be my favorite, but it seems a little facile to say that today. But the honorable mention, I would say, would be Dragonfire. Dragonfire is not totally a character-based game, because you have a lot of deck-building elements, and you have a lot of, like Munchkin, where you're starting out with the same character as everyone else,
right?
And you're building off that.
But what Dragonfire has and others don't have is it has a campaign system, which means your characters start building up abilities and skills over time, which means your character's not going to end up built the same way as anyone else's.
Another really good one is Pandemic, but
because
that just doesn't quite tickle my fancy. I would say that's definitely character-based. But...
Yes, and they also have the same type of persistent campaign for some of their stuff, too.
Yeah, I do like that. I played some Legacy with one of my friends.
Is releasing one with a similar concept, which means I'm going to be out even more money. God damn it.
So that's mine. I would have to narrow that down to D&D.
Speaking of which, Betrayal's not a great example because you do have a lot of random shit that can alter your character, and there's only so many stats, so you can only do so much of the character. But it is still fairly character-based because each of the different characters does play slightly differently and will pick up different stats and more or less stats depending on what they're looking at. So that's another decent example.
I could say that. Yeah. So
Plus,
how about you? What's your favorite hero?
It has to be either Sentinels or Betrayal. I love both. I'm a massive superhero fan. I'm a massive superhero geek. Shocking, I know. But So that just ticks all the right boxes for me. I love the character designs behind them. I just love the characters, and the gameplay works so well that I can't complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I could, but what would be the point?
I mean, depending on, like, sometimes you end up complaining about it.
Yeah.
Like when you're facing Progeny.
Gods.
I think we'll play some Sentinels after this.
I think so. And since we said it counted, I gotta go with Betrayal. I've played so much of it. I love it every time. It has so much replayability. It does so many different things. I love horror. It's one of my favorite genres, and there aren't that many good horror-based board games out there.
Yeah. Well, and Betrayal is it hits a really nice middle tone where you can win, but it's often
not guaranteed.
stacked for the betrayer.
Yeah. And also it's often just fun, and also, my train of thought derails every so often, but also it hits the nice middle ground between being just complex enough that there's a lot going on and there's enough to think about, but not too complex that it's hard to get people playing.
Mm-hmm.
The basic gameplay is very straightforward, so it's easy to get people in and playing, so which makes it great for game nights.
Yes, very much so. I
end up doing a lot of game nights, so I'm always a big fan of games that it's easy to get people into playing.
And like I had a few not so great experiences with Betrayal, so it does have that drawback to it, but when you get a good game of Betrayal going, it is right up there with Arkham Horror, where
it can happen in Betrayal where you just trigger the hunt immediately and then everyone dies, and you're just like, well,
it's good to hit the reset button early, rather than later.
Yes, if something happens, just like, well, we're just gonna reset and start a new game. That's fine.
Yep. So, my thought, since we have kind of this theme going where we pick something to do and present it next week, like homework assignments.
We're out of college now. We shouldn't have homework anymore.
Wouldn't
Our
that
boss,
be the dream?
yeah, our boss is never agreeing.
Nope. By the way, that's me. And,
Figure that one out.
The less gainfully employed people manage to be our own bosses, and we hate ourselves for it.
Yeah.
But I thought that we would come up with, since Sentinels is doing this release, and they are releasing their RPG soon.
Mm-hmm.
Soon being within the next 2 years.
Yeah, RPGs aren't built in a day.
No. There are a lot of reasons which are acceptable, like why they've had to push back the RPG. Like, the last expansion for the card game has been delayed a lot, just between the amount that the Kickstarter got funded. They had to throw in about twice the content.
Yeah.
And that's...
They are the epitome of the company that stumbled into unexpected success.
God, yes.
They were expecting to release a popular little game, and then it exploded.
They weren't expecting to release a popular little game. They were expecting to release a unknown little game.
Well, they were probably hoping it'd be a little popular, it'd be a little cult success, and then it exploded.
So, I thought we would come up with characters for Sentinels. Not full decks.
Okay.
But come up with basically who our RPG character is going to be.
Well, there you go.
Maybe we could at least go the length to, decide what their hero power for the card game would be, and 1 or 2 cards, but come up with a solid concept, something we can port over into the RPG once we get our hands on it. This RPG starter kit is out, and I'm
there you go.
Gonna be ordering it soon.
Of course you are. Is that Julia's gift?
Maybe.
You're just glad she doesn't watch these streams.
Yes. Also no, but yes. So yeah. So next week, we'll go ahead and make a hero character for Sentinels, and you will as well make a hero character for Sentinels.
I can do that.
Okay. And again, if anyone wants to send in their thoughts on our campaign settings for the day, I'll get this episode highlighted, and exported to YouTube tomorrow. And yeah, let us know if you want to see anything further from that, if you are interested in that, if you think we need to shut up.
Don't worry, we heard that a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say that won't be the first time we've heard that, but it's always good to have feedback. Almost always.
Yeah, almost always.
So yeah,
feedback is how we know you guys are actually listening, so that's always nice.
and I like hanging out with you guys, so letting me know what I should stay away from or lean into, always fun.
Definitely.
But yeah, also hopefully next week we'll get this a little more formalized, because this week and last week have been kind of
test runs, shall we say?
To make sure that we could actually sit down and we could talk for an hour. Which we clearly have accomplished. We're running on an hour 10 right now.
There you go.
We will go ahead and get switched up to Sentinels here. I think the Sentinels digital card game.
Sounds good.
I thought about doing Heroes, but Heroes is a little more involved, I think.
Fair enough. And we're talking about Sentinels, so what the hell?
Exactly.
Yep.
I probably should have talked over with you earlier, but it's my apartment, my rules.
There you go. Your stream.
No, but seriously, if you like this, go ahead and hit that follow button. I will be running this talk show with Heledon every Thursday.
Yep.
For the foreseeable.
Yep. If you like the noises that come out of my mouth hole, don't feel free to check out my books and or blogs. Blog. I don't have multiple blogs. I'm not that crazy.
You can put in !MDennis in chat for more information. I'm going to do that right now for anyone currently viewing.
There you go.
And additionally, I will get his blog linked into that macro soon. But here's another link to that.
Yep.
He is a author for a series on Amazon.
Yep.
2 series.
Yep, 2 series on Amazon.
Urban Cohorts and
Gathering in the Shadows.
Gathering in the Shadows.
Yes.
I had it. I got it this time.
Yep. If you have Kindle Prime, both are free. Otherwise, it's 99 cents.
Yeah, check him out. This is my dungeon master, and he does awesome stories. I do recommend them.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, someday maybe I'll have a series to put up there with you, if I have time.
Okay. Yeah, it's always a struggle.
But we're going to go on BRB for a few minutes, and then we'll get set up with Sentinels of the Multiverse, the digital card game.
Yep.
So
what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? This is my level. This is the level of humor I have, folks. It's just puns. It doesn't get any better.
That.
You see why I don't do stand-up comedy.
That joke was as impactful as a wet blanket. See you guys. As usual. I hope you guys can join us, but if you can't, remember to keep it random and have a good one, guys. This is K42 signing out, along with
Heledon. Good to see you guys. Have a good one.